In the name of the one who loves the beloved and love itself. Amen. Amen. Please be seated. For the grace of God has appeared, bringing salvation to all. It's from the beginning of the reading from the letter to Titus. It's quite a tall order to make sense of that tonight, so I'll avoid it for a moment. I said to people on Sunday that I had chosen my my Christmas binge watching, and I have chosen Julia from HBO Max, which is a drama about Julia Child. I'm slightly obsessed with Julia Child. I gave people an image in their heads of me kind of being in that post-Christmas period, kind of wearing a onesie, drinking some hot chocolate, and watching Julia on the TV as I'm kind of unwinding after Christmas. Somebody said that was an image they couldn't get out of their head. Sorry. But it's a reminder that we love stories. We love stories. And stories tell us an awful lot. We've turned the whole cathedral into a storybook. We've got it filled with things that reference different parts of the gospel story, the stained glass windows and all the things around us, but not least the creche. The children were here earlier this evening, both 3 and 5, and they were telling us the story of Jesus being born. And we love the story. And the story is the thing that contains all the meaning that we could possibly ever want to access in our faith. But again, that feels like a bit too much, so I'm going to stick with Julia Child for a moment. I've been puzzling about why I was so interested about this cook, who I never saw live because she was in America when I was in England. But I've learned to love cooking some of her food, and then learned to love watching some of the YouTubes and want to find out a little bit about her life. And it dawned on me yesterday that something had happened with that woman that was particularly interesting for me tonight. And it's this: it wasn't meant to work. She wasn't a young woman who was the most attractive TV personality imaginable. She was 6'2", and she was awkward. She dropped things. She wasn't that great a cook sometimes. I was watching her making onion soup earlier on, and she couldn't get the top off of the vinegar bottle, so she kind of knocked it on the worktop and then said, "Oh, sometimes it goes wrong, and we just have to do this." She noticed that at one point and said to people, "I'm not French and I'm not even a chef. In fact, I'm not always that good a cook. But somehow that's what people watch me for." So I was reflecting on it and realizing that she had access to this great knowledge about French cuisine, this huge kind of history of her education around cooking. But she looked like a regular housewife. A 51-year-old woman who wrestled with the cooking and made mistakes and then fixed it and said, if you get it wrong in the kitchen, they're never going to know on the table. You just pretend that's how it was meant to come out. There's something very human about it, something that made people feel comfortable and let her into their lives. And by letting her into their lives, let French cuisine, this huge kind of idea, into their lives. And I want to say that the Incarnation is something like that. This whole concept of the immense grace of God, the phenomenal scale of the divine, this beyond my ability to imagine reality, gets communicated through the eyes of a baby, an infant, a child, with a father who can't even book a hotel. There's a mess in the middle of this story, and it's the mess that lets me in. And it's the mess that gives me access to this immense divine resource of grace that I need, that can transform my life and yours. I was thinking about Julia Child, and that took me to thinking about Johnny Cash, because that makes sense to me. Might not make sense to you, but it makes sense to me. And an album of Johnny Cash's that I love, my My dad loves Johnny Cash, and so I would listen to Johnny Cash in the car growing up. Even though I was in England, he loved American country music. So I knew lots of Johnny Cash, but then as I was growing into adulthood, I heard the live recording of Johnny Cash at San Quentin. Have you heard it? I encourage you to go listen to it. Listen to the live version. You need to hear all of the background noise. Johnny Cash was doing a series of visits to prisons, to Folsom Prison, to San Quentin Prison. And when he did that live performance in San Quentin, you can hear the inmates in the audience in front of him making noise, laughing at his jokes, reacting to him. You can also kind of hear a little sense of menace. Is he going to hold this together? He criticizes the BBC for trying to tell him exactly which songs to sing and says, I'm going to sing what I want to sing and what you want me to sing, not what they want me to sing for the show. And then there's an expletive that gets kind of let off. And the audience, the inmates, laugh and then listen because he's there for them. He talks about his experience of being in jail. Honestly, I think he was arrested once for picking flowers after curfew and put in jail for like 2 nights. But he spun that into a great story that gave him a sense of connection to the people that he was with in the high security prison in San Quentin. He told them, I've written a special song for you tonight. I've written a song about San Quentin. And it's difficult to write a song that really says something. But what I've tried to do is to imagine how you feel. And to imagine how I might feel if I was in here. And there are some things that you feel that I think I understand. There are some things you feel I don't understand at all. There are some things that you feel that I, expletive-laden phrase, that I don't care about. But this is what I'm going to sing. And he starts to sing. And his opening line is, San Quentin, you've been living hell to me. You've tortured me since 1963. There's a nervous laugh from the inmates, perhaps even more nervous laugh from the guards. There's a moment of kind of anxiety. And then as he sings more, they recognize that he's really talking to them about their experience, about the fragility of their lives, about the things that have gone wrong. He even unpacks the injustice of the American prison system, right there in a prison, in front of the prisoners, with the guards present. He says San Quentin might not do all that much good. The congressman doesn't understand. He gets to the end of the song, and the audience asks him to sing it again. And he says, yes, I'll sing it again in a moment, but just give me a second. If any of the guards are still talking to me, would one of them bring me a drink? I need a glass of water. And they do. And there's a slight boo. And then he drinks his drink, and then he sings the song again. And you hear in their reaction the fact that they feel seen. They feel recognized. They laugh and they cheer as he unpacks the difficulty of this situation. Get to the end of the whole concert, and he starts thanking people, including the governor of San Quentin for letting him be there. At which point the inmates start to boo, and Johnny Cash says, oh no, you don't mean that. And they start to laugh. Somehow, rather than this turn into a prison riot, he's turned that crowd of people desperately in need of grace into a community. There is something profound going on about the nature of the Incarnation in that album, and I encourage you to go listen to it. Johnny Cash is also bringing his faith into that moment. His recognition that he can see these people in their moment of fragility and love them. Some of them there for terrible crimes. Some of them maybe believing they don't deserve to be there. He can see all of them and be present with them. There's something about the Incarnation in that experience for me. The human connection being the thing that communicates divine grace into a situation that is more complicated than I would know how to deal with. So we have a baby, an infant, and we have the immense resources of divine grace. And God's really wise, because actually if you were to just encounter the immense resources of divine grace right in front of you, it would knock you out, it would blow you away, you'd be flattened. You couldn't cope. God knows that you have to encounter it in the eyes of that child. And also in the network of relationships that's going to build up in his life. Him and his mother, Joseph, caring for him. His circle of disciples. The moments when he's going to have confrontational conversations in difficult moments with people that disagree with him. The tender moments. God understands that we can most fully encounter divine grace in that human connection. And so that's the way he came to us. That's the way he comes to us and wishes to be a part of our lives. And I hazard a guess that all of you are facing tender moments. Maybe you're a mother trying to cook food for your family, like Julia Child. Maybe you have a loved one incarcerated. Maybe you have a relationship that's broken down. It feels really tender right now. Really complex. That's the place. That slightly tender, broken, fragile place, that human place, where if we can open ourselves up to it, the divine grace and presence, the resources for salvation, the love of God that can transform our lives can open up in our hearts and perhaps touch the people around us. Been reminded recently of the immense grace that has come to me through alcoholic friends who have recognized their fragility and sought a higher power, the immense resources of divine grace, to help transform them. And then have been able to reach out to me and to others and say, here is healing. Here is transformation. Here is love. Hold precious the fragile moments. The eyes of your loved one. The argument you last had with your partner or your friend or your workmate. Look into that moment and recognize that it is right in there that if we pay extra attention, we can, in the most human moments, even when the bishop forgets where she's bishop of. Sorry. That was cheap. Those fragile human moments when we are most ourselves, when we are most likely to trip over ourselves, it is there that if we pay attention, the immense resources of divine grace can break open in our hearts and we can make them available to those around us. And before you leave tonight, go over and have a look at our tiny sculpture of the child. It's telling a story. Entertain the story. Look into it. That's where you'll find God. Amen.